One day I was finally able to quit the toy store where I was working and start working at something I actually liked. I've been here on the platform for 15 years. In the last 4 or 5 years, things have gone really well for me. I maintained this channel and launched new ones like El Dia Que and Dos Mileros. I earned 5 plaques. For now, on YouTube, I was able to set up a production company with several friends of mine, each of whom is working on some of these channels. I also did well in my personal life. I managed to get married, I bought this apartment where I'm living, and I bought a house for my mother. Honestly, in the end, everything turned out just as I had planned. Yes, everything went well, but the lamp looks weird. When and where was that catchphrase that everyone repeats today born? Because there are people who won't stop saying that we live in a simulation. What is known as a glitch in the matrix? What does it mean to not clip? What is that practice known as shifting? Can we move between universes? Is it possible to jump between realities? Answering these and other questions will lead us into a tunnel of uncertainty that will end in the curious case of the lamp. Does it look strange? And other matrix glitches. If you're interested in this kind of video, write matrix glitch in the comments. And we'll be putting together another report like this for you to watch. And you can also send us information, suggest topics similar to this one, share videos or anything else that could help us put together other parts. With nothing more to say, let's get started. The phrase we're discussing became popular in 2023 and is experiencing a revival now. Although TikTok made it popular, it actually originated on Reddit in 2012, over 10 years ago. In a thread where a very particular and concise question was posed, it went something like this. Has it ever happened to you that you meet someone in a dream, fall in love with that person, and then wake up and suffer because you know you'll never be able to see them again? The question generated a lot of responses. Many people felt inspired to share their own experiences, and heated debates broke out. In that context, a user named Temtotason made a post that soon attracted all the attention. Those who came across that post were immediately fascinated and also a bit paranoid. However, I don't intend to dwell on others' feelings. I suggest that you be the ones to experience firsthand the impact of that story, which would soon go viral. Ready? Good. I recommend that you turn off the lights in your house and leave only one lamp on. The post said, and I decided to focus on being happy. I met a wonderful girl, she made my heart beat and made me blush. I courted her for months and dealt with some idiot boyfriends before finally winning her over. After 2 years, we got married, and almost immediately she gave me a daughter. I had a great job, so my wife stayed home. 2 years later, our second child was born. I would go into their rooms every morning before going to work and focus them. I felt my life was perfect, nothing could ruin it, or so I saw it. One day, sitting on the couch, I noticed that the perspective of the living room lamp was strange, like inverted. It was still 3D, but it was just wrong. I was hypnotized. I couldn't stop looking at it. I stayed up all night analyzing that phenomenon from every angle. The next morning, I skipped work. Something wasn't right with that lamp. I stopped eating. I only got up from the couch to go to the bathroom. I stared at that damn lamp for 3 days. Before my wife got too worried, she had someone come talk to me. At this point, my sanity was falling apart and my wife was going crazy. Realizing there was no escape, she took the kids to her mother's. That was right before my epiphany. I discovered that the lamp simply wasn't real, the house wasn't real, my wife, my kids, none of it was real. The last 10 years of my life aren't real, I thought. The lamp grew wider and deeper, continuing to have inverted dimensions. It filled my entire perspective, and all I could see was red. I heard voices, screams, all kinds of strange noises, and I started to feel pain. A lot of pain. My first words were, "I'm missing teeth." Then I opened my eyes. I was lying on my back on the sidewalk, surrounded by people I didn't know. A police officer picked me up, dragged me on the sidewalk, and took me to the hospital. On the way, I realized that I had returned to the moment when the football player had hit me. They gave me computed tomography scans and things like that. I spent about 3 years in a horrible depression, suffering the loss of my wife and children, and dealing with the knowledge that they never existed. I was afraid of going crazy, so I cried myself to sleep hoping to see her in my dreams. I never have. However, sometimes I do see my son. Usually it's just a glimpse out of the corner of my eye, but I know it's him and he's there. He is always 5 years old and I can never hear him. Interesting, isn't it? Temtota's-san, who uploaded this story, always claimed that it was real, that it was a very personal anecdote and not just a simple literary tale. He would even make posts sharing the support he had received from the community. He also said that many others had laughed at him, saying that what he was claiming was simply impossible. Temtota's-san kept repeating that nothing could be taken for granted in response to everything, to know everything in life, and that sometimes the strangest things can happen. Finally, the young man mentioned that a large number of people had asked him to make a script, a comic, or a book with the story. He told all of them that he wasn't interested in registering what he had told and that they could consider it open source. Basically, he gave the green light for the story of the lamp to be adapted into any format they could think of. It was clear the post's author wasn't trying to profit from the story, at least not financially. After this, he slowly faded away. However, by that time he had already planted the seed of his legacy. The story of the lamp became a sensation and a metaphor for fears that were both disturbing and profound. Fears such as realizing everything around us is a lie we may be unable to resist or lose. As many analysts would later say, the story is doubly perverse. It shows us that both reality and we ourselves are fragile. The philosophical implications of all these ideas warranted extensive analyses to be written on the subject. The questions that overwhelmed everything were fit for a science fiction movie. Would you be willing to wake up and know the truth if waking up means leaving behind everything you have in this world of lies we're so addicted to? To put it another way, red pill or blue pill. Others, however, preferred to take the story more literally, and not only did they take for granted that we live in a simulation, but that it often has glitches. According to them, this happens more often than we think. That's why, after hearing the story of the lamp, a group of people started collecting disturbing experiences from others who had gone through something similar. Their goal? To prove that glitches in the matrix are real, and that sometimes they let us peek into the real world hidden behind the zeros and the ones. After the story about the lamp, there were others just as impactful that left a mark on the readers who wandered the platform in those years. These were stories that, although they would not achieve the fame of the original, still began to be copied and shared on scary story websites. Ready for a second round? This story has left several people frozen and is known as the story of the man in the plaid shirt. My dad used to get up around 3 ante-meridiem every morning to go to work from a very young age. I would wake up alone and go downstairs to see him before he left. One morning, when I was 4 years old, I got to the bottom of the stairs and noticed that the front door was ajar. I opened it and saw my father wearing his favorite work shirt, a plaid shirt, walking down the driveway toward his truck. I opened the door and shouted for him to come back and give me a goodbye hug. He slowly turned and walked back to the house. He looked at me in such a strange way that it started to scare me, and I began to cry and ask him what was wrong. Just as he was about to reach me, a pair of arms wrapped around me from behind. I turned my head to see my understandably frightened father looking at his double. He glanced at my father and ran out through the entrance, while my father pulled me into the house and locked the door. The strangest morning of my life. I never fully understood it. I wouldn't trust the memory I have from when I was 4 years old if my father hadn't witnessed it too. He rarely talks about it now. Were you scared? Don't worry, this is just beginning. Some people have suggested that the protagonist of this story was a shapeshifter or a creature similar to those from other folk legends. However, according to many, the story showed that reality is invaded by realities that might act like a virus. These would be anomalies that occasionally manifest to feed, creating disappearances that are never solved or committing murders for which a culprit is never found. Similarly, there was a craze for another story type more directly tied to the Lamb's Tale, and where what was at stake was the mystery of remembering lives that, for some reason, no longer belong to us. The following story is known as the story of the old man and falls into this subcategory, more or less like this. We were playing the fainting game with my friends. The game consisted of doing some rapid breathing exercises and then adopting a relaxed position. If done correctly, you could lose consciousness. I did it and suddenly became a completely different person. I was much older than I was back then. I was about 70 years old and I was thinking in another language. I think it was Spanish, Portuguese, or Italian. The last thing I remember before waking up was walking down a dirt path, looking at what seemed to be corn. I look at the nearby house, thinking of my wife, children, and grandchildren. I felt the same fulfillment you do thinking about those things. I was thinking about birthdays, about when I last saw them, about when I would see them again. Everything was full of detail, as life often is. When I woke up, I was lying on the basement floor, surrounded by my friends who were laughing around me. But I was horrified because I was still the old man. About how I had been teleported to that strange place, and who were those people looming over me and pointing at me. The feeling took about 30 seconds to fade away, and the world started to make sense again. I can still remember the little stupid things about myself. The story of that old self has stayed with me ever since. What were stories like these claiming to be real, trying to tell us? Do we live many lives at the same time? Are past lives real, and can we accidentally access them? Is it possible that sometimes our memories aren't completely rewritten and we can catch a glimpse of who we once were? And on the other hand, where is that consciousness stored? Is it in what people call the soul, or are we just a simple algorithm? Either way, if you like these stories, I'll leave you a bonus at the end. A video with another story from Reddit. Now it's time to keep moving forward. Although many still saw these stories as fiction, coming from very imaginative minds, others suggested that it wouldn't be strange to move through different planes or points in space and time. In fact, at a certain point, an activity known as shifting started to become a trend. What is shifting? It's basically creating an avatar in your mind with which you can spy on parallel worlds. Shifting, or in Spanish, reality shifting, is a practice that has gained popularity, especially on the internet, and it consists, according to those who experience it, of moving a person's consciousness from this reality to a different one. We are not talking about simple dreams or guided imagination. For those who believe in shifting, this change is real, as vivid as being awake. The best part is, it happens at will. The central idea is that there are infinite realities, as if the multiverse were not just a physical theory but an open door within reach of the mind. So, a person could, for example, shift to a reality where they live in a castle and fight against orcs, or even to one where they made different decisions in their life. The process typically involves techniques like meditation, visualization, affirmations, or scripting your desired reality. All of this is done with the intention of provoking a mental state in which consciousness jumps from this reality to another. Skeptics argue that shifting is a form of lucid dreaming or intense suggestion, while for others it is an experience that is highly spiritual or interdimensional. No scientific consensus supports it. Still, thousands have shared their testimonies through videos and social media. Is shifting perhaps a corrosive way of not dealing with our... Is it a responsibility or just a hobby? Is something wrong with it? Unlike believing that we live in a simulation, those who practice shifting create their own illusion, one that can be just as important in their lives as the one they live when they're not shifting. The phenomenon took on somewhat eerie overtones when people began to say that they could meet each other in the places they visited when they were shifting. Is this possible? Can a collective dream be created and programmed? Forums inviting people to adventures in unknown worlds became increasingly common. This sparked fear in some who saw these activities as evidence of youth detachment. Travel journals also became common. Boys and girls would recount the adventures they had experienced with their favorite characters. They boasted about spending years in those realities just by closing their eyes for a few hours. All of this became material for fanfictions, increasingly ambitious ones that were compiled and of which many are avid readers. And that's not all. A theory gradually gained strength. According to the most fundamentalist shifters, many famous fiction authors don't invent stories but discover them by traveling with their consciousness to those lands. So for a while, a group of people even claimed that the very same J.K. Rowling didn't create Harry Potter. She met him after accidentally arriving at Hogwarts. So people like Rowling, Tolkien, or Stan Lee are actually witnesses to amazing worlds that anyone trained in the art of meditation could reach. The summary is that yes, there wouldn't be just one reality, but meta-realities and much of what we consider as fantasy. It's just a reflection that people have of those worlds that orbit us and sometimes collide with ours. At this point in the journey, what do you all think? Have you ever shifted? On the other hand, there are those who believe that leaving reality is possible, but not by shifting, rather with a method known as no-clipping. A method that could let you experience what is known as the backrooms or the storerooms. Before we continue, let me clarify that this channel has a detailed report on the backrooms. I invite you to watch it after you finish this video. Here, we're only interested in talking about the mysterious no-clip. No-clip is a term commonly used in video games. In Doom 2, for example, you could use the no-clip cheat. But what does this mean? To understand this, you first need to know that in video game programming, objects move absolutely. Unless their space is restricted, for example, by indicating the presence of a wall. In the game Doom, the no-clipping trick allowed our player to go through walls and in this way, move through the levels, as if he were invisible or existing on another plane. As an interesting fact, if you used the no-clipping trick against the final boss in Doom, you could go through a hallway where you would find the disembodied head of the game's director, John Romero. Shooting the head was the way to win. This means that by no-clipping, you can reach the guts of the simulation and basically find the people in charge of making this simulation. The question is, can you not clip in the real world? Many people say yes. There is no guaranteed method to achieve it. However, there are some tips to increase the chances of making it. One method is to find a place with a crack in reality. In The Matrix, glitches in reality appeared as déjà vu. Those who are looking for glitches that can lead to the backrooms have to let themselves be guided by their instincts above all else. Glitches usually inhabit those kinds of places that tend to make us feel fear, a sense of danger, or strangeness. These typical places give us goosebumps. Once we locate one of these places, we need to look for walls that are usually darker than normal or that don't seem to cast a shadow. The glitch can also appear as doors that didn't exist before and seem out of place, or as damaged and usually old objects. Interacting with such a wall, door, or object can take us from one moment to the next. To the B side of everything we know. A B-side filled with endless hallways and terrible creatures. Thomas Campbell, a former National Aeronautics and Space Administration applied physics scientist, suggested in 2017 that reality unfolds before the observer as they move forward. Just like with the graphics in some video games, so technically there wouldn't be a single reality, but many simulations coexisting thanks to centralized programming. But beyond the way we choose to test our conception of what is real or not, there's a third group that believes the story of the lamp is actually a warning about something much more terrible. The way our brain can deceive us, creating memories that don't exist.
Mysteries of memory.
Major world powers are known to have experimented with the human mind. Ample evidence shows that during war and bloc tensions, countries with the most resources allocated large sums of money to find ways to breach minds, either to implant subliminal messages or to erase controversial and sensitive information. What is not very well known is the vital role that a woman played in everything related to the study of memories. And why shouldn't they be considered reliable? Elizabeth Loftus, also known as Fishman, was born in Los Angeles, California on October 16, 1944, and lost her mother to drowning at age 14, an event of which she would remember almost nothing. At least until some time later, a relative assured her that it had been she herself, Elizabeth, who had found her mother's body. This revelation caused the young woman to start remembering details related to the accident. However, and to her surprise, Elizabeth would later confirm that it had been her aunt and not herself who had found her mother dead. This experience led Loftus to become interested in how people create false memories based on suggestions or statements from others. To prove her point, Elizabeth conducted several experiments, such as asking people to remember the time when, as children, they got lost in a shopping mall. Didn't you struggle to spot a pattern? If she was insistent and implanted the idea that a trauma could be hidden in the other person's mind, the memory would emerge. The point was, Elizabeth hadn't drawn from real experience, so it was likely that the person in question had actually never gotten lost anywhere. Her findings have had a great impact on the legal system, especially in the evaluation of eyewitness testimonies. Loftus has been a critical voice regarding the reliability of these testimonies, pointing out that even if a person is absolutely convinced of what they remember, it doesn't guarantee that what they recount actually happened. Her studies were also widely used to debunk cases of false abuse implanted during hypnosis sessions or similar therapies. Is our brain really that malleable? Is it enough for someone to just say the right word? The exact moment to hack our inner self? How can we make sure that everything we want to know won't just vanish before our eyes from one second to the next? Are we a graphic adventure with programming issues? Are we part of a much bigger scheme, where what we consider real is just a link in an infinite and higher chain? Is the mind a trap or our greatest ally? And within it, there is the potential to remember past lives, future lives, parallel lives, and anything we want. As we think together the answers to these questions, I propose an exercise for you, because I know that right now you are watching this video. You are looking at the screen, maybe your phone, your monitor, your television, whatever it is. And everything seems pretty real. You hear my real voice, you see my presence as if I were a real person. And you know who you are, you know why you're sitting here right now, you know why you're looking at the screen, and you know why you clicked on this video and so on. You know your life, family, friends, and environment, but doesn't the lamp look odd? And that's it for today's video, but a promise is a promise, and now I'm going to tell you another one of my favorite stories from Reddit. If you're afraid of having nightmares, it's better to skip this alternate ending. The story is from the user Fuck Me Daily, and it goes like this. A few years ago, I bought 2 mountain bikes on a government auction website. They were used as police bikes in the local parks and were identical, one blue GT and one gray. I sold one and kept the other. I kept it for 2 or 3 years and sometimes stored it in a specific spot in my apartment. My fiancé moved in with me almost 3 years ago, when I was still using it. One weekend, my fiancée was going through her phone documents to do some things for her resume. At one point, she asked me about the bicycle I used to have. She shows me a picture of the inside of our apartment where I used to keep the bicycle. In the picture, you could see a red mountain bike in the same place where I used to keep mine, which was blue. Seeing my surprised expression, she asked, "When did you have a red bicycle?" I never had a red bicycle. I never rode a bicycle with anyone who had one, and I definitely never let anyone else bring their bicycle into my house. It was in the same spot where my bicycle would normally be. It had the same details, even the same dents and scratches, but it wasn't mine. Maybe my other self in another reality also likes biking, but we just prefer different colors. I know it's a silly situation that doesn't matter in my life, but it's made me feel like I'm going crazy, or that there was a glitch in the matrix. If you found these kinds of stories interesting, I invite you to comment "glitch in the matrix" below and to leave a like on this video. If this video gets over 10,000 likes and there are more than 1,000 comments saying this, we'll make a second part, reading more stories like these, taken from Reddit or from forums out there that are going around. With nothing more to say, I say goodbye. I'm Magnus Mephisto. Here are a few videos to keep binge watching. Goodbye.